with noise of battle and the dust of fray, half hid in fog, the gloomy mountain lay, but Succoth's watchers, from their outer fields, saw fits of flame and gleams of clashing shields, for, where the yellow river draws its spring, the hosts of Israel traveled, thundering there, beating like the storm that sweeps to sea across the reefs of chafing Galilee. The car of Abner and the sword of Saul drave Gaza down Gilboa's southern wall, but swift and sure the spears of Ekron flew, till peak and slope were drenched with bloody dew. Shout, Timnath, shout! The blazing leaders cried, and hurled the stone and dashed the stave aside. Shout, Timnath, shout! Let Hazor hold the height, bend the long bow and break the lords of fight. From every hand the swarthy strangers sprang, chief leaped on chief. With buckler rang the flower of armies. Set in Syrian heat, the ridges clamored under laboring feet, nor stayed the warriors till, from Salem's road, the crescent horns of Abner's squadrons glowed. Then, like a shooting splendor on the wing, the strong-armed son of Kish came thundering, and as in autumn's fall, when woods are bare, two adverse tempests meet in middle air, so Saul and Achish, grim with heat and hate, met by the brook and shook the scales of fate, for now the struggle swayed, and, firm as rocks against the storm wind of the equinox, the rallied lords of Judah stood and bore, all day, the fiery tides of fourfold war. But he that fasted in the secret cave and called up Samuel from the quiet grave, and stood with darkness and the mantled ghosts a bitter night on shrill Samarian coasts, knew well the end of how the feudal sword of Israel would be broken by the Lord, how Gath would triumph, with the tawny line that bend the knee at Dagon's brittle shrine, and how the race of Kish would fall to wreck, because of vengeance stayed at Amalek yet drove the sun like king, nor rested hand till yellow evening filled the level land. Then Judah reeled before a biting hail of sudden arrows shot from Achor's vale, where Libnah, lapped in blood from thigh to heel, drew the 10th string, and pierced the quivering steel. There fell the sons of Saul, and, man by man, the chiefs of Israel, up to Jonathan, and while swift Achish stooped and caught the spoil, 10 chosen archers, red with sanguine toil, sped after Saul, who, faint and sick, and sore with many wounds, had left the thick of war. He, like a baffled bull by hunters pressed, turned sharp about, and faced the flooded west, and saw the star-like spears and moony spokes gleam from the rocks and lighten through the oaks a sea of splendor. How the chariots rolled on wheels of blinding brightness manifold, while stumbling over spike and spine and spur of sultry lands, escaped the son of Ner with smitten men. At this the front of Saul grew darker than a blasted tower wall, and seeing how there crouched upon his right, aghast with fear, a black Amalekite, he called, and said, I pray thee, man of pain, red from the scourge, and recent from the chain, set thou thy face to mine, and stoutly stand with yonder bloody sword hilt in thy hand, and fall upon me. But the faltering hind stood trembling, like a willow in the wind. Then further Saul, lest Ashdod's vaunting hosts should bear me captive to their bleak-blown coasts, I pray thee, smite me. Seeing peace has fled, and rest lies wholly with the quiet dead. At this a flood of sunset broke, and smote keen, blazing sapphires round a kingly throat, touched arm and shoulder, glittered in the crest, and made swift starlights on a jeweled breast. So, starting forward, like a loosened hound, the stranger clutched the sword and wheeled it round, and struck the Lord's anointed. Fierce and fleet Philistia came, with shouts and clattering feet, by gaping gorges and by rough defile. Dark Ashdod beat across a dusty mile, hot Hazor's bowmen toiled from spire to spire, and Gath sprang upwards, like a gust of fire. On either side did Libnah's lords appear, and brass-clad Timnath thundered in the rear. Mark, Achish, mark! Southwest and south there sped a dabbled hireling from the dreadful dead. Mark, Achish, mark! The mighty front of Saul, great in his life and godlike in his fall. This was the arm that broke Philistia's pride, where Kishon chafes his seaward-going tide. This was the sword that smote till set of sun-red Gath, from Michmash unto Ajalon, low in the dust. And Israel scattered far and dead the trumps and crushed the hoofs of war. So fell the king, as it was said by him who hid his forehead in a mantle dim at bleak Endor, What time unholy rites vexed the long sleep of still Cimmerian heights, for, bowed to earth before the hoary priest, did he of Kish withstand the smoking feast, to fast, in darkness and in sackcloth rolled, and house with wild things in the biting cold, because of sharpness lent to Gaza's sword, and Judah widowed by the angry Lord. So silence came as when the outer verge of Carmel takes the white and whistling surge, hoarse, hollow noises fill the caves, and roar along the margin of the echoing shore. Thus war had thundered, but as evening breaks across the silver of Assyrian lakes, when reapers rest, and through the level red of sunset, peace, like holy oil, is shed, thus silence fell. But Israel's daughters crept outside their thresholds, waited, watched, and wept. Then they that dwell beyond the flats and fens of sullen Jordan, and in gelid glens of Jabesh Gilead, chosen chiefs and few around their loins the hasty girdle drew, and faced the forests, huddled fold on fold, and dells of glimmering greenness manifold. What time Orion in the west did seat a shining foot on hills of wind and wet, these journeyed nightly till they reached the capes where Ashdod revelled over heated grapes, and while the feast was loud and scouts were turned, from Saul's bound body cord by cord they burned, and bore the king athwart the place of tombs, and hasted eastward through the tufted glooms, nor broke the cake nor stayed the step till morn shot over Debir's cones and crags forlorn. From Jabesh then the weeping virgins came, in Jabesh then they built the funeral flame, with costly woods they piled the lordly pyre, brought yellow oils and fed the perfect fire, while round the crescent stately elders spread the flashing armor of the mighty dead, with crown and spear, and all the trophies won from many wars by Israel's dreadful son. Thence, when the feet of evening paused and stood on shadowy mountains and the roaring flood, as through a rushing twilight, full of rain, the weak moon looked athwart Gadara's plain, the younger warriors bore the urn, and broke the humid turf about a wintering oak, and buried Saul, and, fasting, went their ways, and hid their faces 7 nights and days.